So I've just been getting more and more curious about my own body and how I notice things are changing as I get older. I was never a person when I was younger that I really noticed any symptoms of what we describe as PMS. Like I had a couple cramps maybe, but I didn't feel big emotional swings or anything like that. And that has certainly changed for me since I had kids. So I have a background in holistic nutrition. I've been doing that for a long time. And so I have a pretty good understanding of how all the systems in the body work together and, you know, what food does and what stress does and all that kind of stuff. But it's always interesting to notice it in your own self, right? And sort of to walk through that process. And it's kind of like I was saying to Megan, COVID has opened up a lot of stuff for me, giving me space and time to kind of dive into some of this stuff. So this has been sort of evolving, I think, over the last little bit. So what I was hoping to share today was just some concrete information for you, like physiological stuff about what happens in our cycles, because I don't know about you, but I was never taught that, other than you get your period, it should be this many days, and we don't really talk about it, right? So I'm going to give you a little bit of that. I'm going to talk a little bit about the moon, which I am definitely a student of at this point in time, but I've been tracking myself, and it's been really interesting to see how things are working together. And just to kind of reaffirm that connection to the earth and the cosmos, and like it's all connected. And then I wasn't really going to get into much beyond that, but then this morning when I woke up, I was just like, I need to talk about this. So I'm going to get into a little bit too, just like some things that you can look at if you feel like maybe something's out of sync with your system, or what you're experiencing is like, maybe something's just not quite right. So where you can go from there. So I will throw on my slides here. Give me one. Oh, wait. First I have to share. Hold on. Okay, can you guys see that? Can you see my slide?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, so yeah, this process for me, this little chat's really kind of like about tapping into this cyclical nature that we have, and just understanding our body and what we're going through on a deeper level, so that we can actually work with our cycle instead of bumping up against it all the time. And I think that's something that our society and our culture have really created. And it's been around for a long time, like long before we were ever here. Women have been, it's, you know, this process that we go through every month, this critical, like life-giving process is sort of played down. We want to hide it away. We don't want to talk about the things that maybe aren't comfortable or pleasant that are associated with it. And I think we really need to shift that. So we'll talk about our cycles, how we're affected by the moon, some of the tendencies and strengths that we actually pull out of these different cycles, and how we can use them to our advantage instead of kind of sitting in that cocoon and feeling all the feels. And then just things that we can do to make sure that we're maintaining a healthy cycle, that it's working for us in the way that it should. So to start with, I just want you to think back a little bit and ask yourself some of these questions. Like, how did you learn about your menstrual cycle? What were you told? What do you think are some of the things that have impacted your understanding of this over the years? How do you feel about your menstrual cycle now that you're older, that you know your body a little better? Maybe you've had kids. Has this understanding impacted the choices you've made? Does it impact the way you see your cycle, the way you feel during different stages of your cycle? These were all things that I just kind of started thinking about, so I wrote them down. And especially for those of us that are moms, how do we give space for our kids to see a different picture of this as we're raising them? And I don't just mean for those of us that have daughters. I think for those of us who have sons, we can educate them and explain to them also what's going on in a very different light than perhaps what they're going to hear. And I think that is going to create a lot of space for really beautiful relationships as they age, and they're able to support the women in their life in different ways. Because ultimately, this is a really valuable part of our existence, and it's something that we all have in common, right? We all go through this. I keep hitting my little button to flip the screen and then it doesn't work. Okay, so really, this is the most earthly cycle that we have, or you could even think of like the cycle that is most connected to the greater universe around us. It is cyclical in nature. So there's always a waxing and waning. There's an ebb and flow in the tides. We have an ebb and flow in our body. There's a change of the seasons. Our phases that we go through every month could also be likened to the seasons. Okay, and I'll go through that in a little bit. All of this is reflected in our menstrual cycle and in the female body. The cycle of ovulation is heavily impacted by the moon. And this is what I've just been kind of peeling back for myself, and it's been so cool. There's even research, like documented research of how light affects women's cycles. And there was a study that was done that showed that women that had irregular cycles, like long, different changes in, you know, sometimes it was shorter, sometimes it was much longer. If they slept consistently with a light in their room at nighttime, their cycle shifted to match more of a 28-day cycle, just because they were closer to a light. They had light in their life. So you can think about how the moon is impacting us when it's in its phases of light and when it's in its phases of dark. And they were able to mimic that in this research study, and it impacted people's cycles, which then also impacts fertility, right? So we really are connected to this, and there's not a lot in a mainstream culture that ever talks about how our cycle has this earthly or celestial component, right? That it works with these cycles. And I think kind of opening this up is just such a nice way to create more understanding around this for ourselves, because we can notice like, oh, the moon's doing this, I'm feeling like this. Oh, that actually makes sense, right? It's not such an anomaly then the way that we're feeling. So learning about that is really, really cool. So I wanted to start and just talk a little bit about the cycles, like from a physiological perspective, so that we understand that when we're going through this monthly process, these things are not in our head. What we're feeling is not being imagined. This is actually things that are happening in our body. So the first day of our cycle would be the first day of your menstruation. And this is what we liken to be like our winter, okay? So this is when your progesterone levels go down, and that causes the breakdown and the shedding of the uterine lining to come away from the body. And we have our period. So during this time, our hormones are low, our energy is low. We are typically much more introspective, and our intuitive abilities really come forward during our period. We probably have a greater desire to rest. We might also feel as we're actually shedding this or kind of cleansing this, it's like a monthly cleanse, right? We're shedding this part of ourselves every month. You might also feel a real emotional release at this time, right? That's a period of cleansing that you go through as well. And often is reported feelings of wanting to clean or organize in your home. And I will say for sure that happened to me this month. I was like going through all the things, reorganizing, and then I was looking at my moon calendar. I was like, oh, well, that's interesting, right? So that is what a typical, those 3 to 5 days kind of look like. Once we get into our follicular phase, that's what you can imagine to be like your spring, okay? Things are kind of blooming. I follow a holistic practitioner that likens this to, she calls it the Beyonce phase, because everything is just like coming out, you're out there, you're feeling good. So this runs from the first half of your cycle until ovulation. And this is when the follicular stimulating hormone and the luteinizing hormone are released. Our estrogen and our testosterone go up as we get closer to ovulation. So we're really moving into this kind of peak bloom time in our cycle. So this is when our hormones are on the upswing. They're rising. And it is like a spring, right? It's like coming out of a winter. kind of a darker time. We're sort of moving into the light. Things are new, things are growing. We feel our energy, our mood, even our cognitive function increase at this time. So we also are feeling more confident. We're more extroverted. You might find more of a desire to socialize, which I realize at this time is a little challenging, but typically these are the things that, so it's a great time to be around people. It's a great time to work on projects, put yourself out there. Because you're just stepping into like the fullest bloom of yourself in this time. Okay, so then once we actually hit ovulation, we're moving into our summer. And this is typically, so the menstruation and the follicular phase are typically around the first 14 days of your cycle. And then ovulation through to the end of the luteal phase is about 14 to 28. So it sort of can be divided in half that way now. And that's an average, right? We're all a little bit different. But during this time, this is when your progesterone will go up, your estrogen and your testosterone are high at the beginning, and then they start to drop towards the end of the ovulation. So we start to see a shift in how we're feeling again. So we come into ovulation in full bloom, right? This is our summer. We're ready. I was reading it. I don't really like the way this sounds, but ripe, right? Like this is when we're ready. This is when your mental and your emotional creativity are at your highest. So, getting into like dance or art or any kind of creative projects that you have in mind this time is a perfect time to get into this. We are also naturally more receptive to the people around us. So I sometimes even think about, that's a really, again, another really good time to be around people. But if you have conversations you need to have, if there are things going on in relationships, you're going to be most receptive to the things that are coming at you at this time. So it might be a good time to step into some of those things. This is also when typically our sexual desire is at its highest. It starts to go down towards the end, but we're also secreting pheromones at this time, right? So we're most attractive to other people. And it's all about, right? We would be ready to have a baby at this point. So that's what all of that is working for. Also, because our body knows that if we get pregnant, we're going to need more nourishment, more nutrition, we crave foods at this point in time. So we are looking for things that are higher fat, higher calorie, and our appetite is greater than it is at other periods in the month. And I think this is really important for people, especially if you're looking to make changes in how you're eating or anything like that. Like, try to make those kind of changes at a time when you're craving foods that are a little bit more fatty or salty or things like that is going to be really hard. So we can work with our cycle to make sure, that we have healthier options that can satisfy those needs for us, but like work with things so that it aligns a little bit into how you're feeling, and then it's not such a struggle. Okay. And then the luteal phase is basically like our fall, and this can be up to 2 weeks long. So again, it's different for everyone. This is where we're coming to the end of our ovulatory stage, right? So our estrogen and our testosterone are going down, our progesterone levels are rising. If we're not pregnant, our estrogen and progesterone again drop, and then that's what causes us to have our menses or our period. Okay. So this is actually the period in time when we're most in tune with our inner knowing, our inner self, our dreams and desires, our deepest needs, and we have a strong knowing of what is not working in our lives. And a lot of times this, because we're also more emotional, coming up against that stuff, sometimes when we know something isn't working, it can be part of why we're so emotional at this time, because coming to that stuff can be challenging for us, right? It can be facing things that maybe we know in our intuition, but in life, it may not seem possible. So this is the time to dive into that stuff. It's okay you're going to feel like the last few days for me, I literally have felt like I've been in a cocoon. I've just wanted to be in the house, wearing my comfortable clothes. I didn't want to talk to a lot of people. I was just in my little bubble and kind of retreating inside myself. Lots of meditation, lots of journaling, crazy dreams, and journaling about my dreams. And this is a good time to get those routine tasks done, because you may not feel like you want to take on anything new. So if you've got stuff in the house that needs to get done, that doesn't take a lot of energy, right? These are just, you don't have to think about it. It doesn't take a lot of mental energy, but you can get it done. Those are good things to focus on at this time. Towards the end of the luteal phase, our sex drive starts to go back up. Again, I mentioned vivid dreams, and they may be sexual in nature. And so you can journal about that stuff too, because that's all subconscious stuff coming forward. And then again, the same kind of cravings for the high food, high fat, high food calories, the things that are really nourishing for us, right? We're wanting to nourish, we're wanting to provide like a restorative energy, lots of rest. The other thing that's really interesting to note, and I think it's important for people because a lot of us have other health conditions that we're managing or ailments that we deal with, it is very likely that these things may flare or get a little bit worse during these last 2 weeks of your cycle. So some of these things, these are a list. I won't necessarily read them all off to you, but like skin issues, depression, anxiety, OCD, allergies. I come from the living with irritable bowel disease world, and I can tell you my symptoms were always worse around the time of my cycle. Migraines, acne, arthritis. So the reason that I put this in here is because when we're living with these things, we have a level of stress that we're managing all the time just because we are dealing with these things, right? That's just the way it goes. When we see things flare, we can get pretty in our head about like, oh my gosh, what's happening? Why is this happening? What am I doing wrong? We can get pretty negative about the experience, right? And so I think understanding that it is not necessarily, right, we don't call it normal, but this is common that these things flare up for people during this time. I think really important to note, because we're in such an emotional place often, especially during that luteal phase, that if you already suffered from things like anxiety or depression or an eating disorder, then you need to be really aware of that during this time and understand that it's not that there's anything more that you're facing or that's wrong with you or like none of that, but just giving yourself some grace and some space to know that this happens, this too shall pass, because I'm going to move out of this cycle in a few days, and then manage just not beating ourselves up so much because of the things that we're experiencing. It's all connected. Okay. One of the things that might be really helpful is actually tracking your cycle. And that's what I've started to do. So I just printed out like a blank piece of paper. And I'll say I've actually been tracking my cycle for a long time, but I was doing it in my journal and I was just trying to write stuff down. And I would go for like 5 days and then I would get distracted and I would forget. I'd probably move into a different cycle and be like in a different space. But this little printout, just a blank calendar off the computer, has been really, really good. And I don't know if you can see, but I have been making some notes, but like I use little symbols. So like that was me one day when my mind was just going crazy. It was like a little face with like things coming out of my head. And I have other days where I've like got the sad face, right? Like I'm just not feeling happy, or I have like happy days when I feel my energy's good and I'm moving and I feel like I'm in a good space. This has been really handy, and I just keep it in my office because I'm in there every day. And so as I sit down, I'm writing stuff down. I would just say keep it somewhere where you see it so that you can notice things. I think just helps us to understand our body a little bit, right? It's hard to just notice things randomly every day and keep track. But if you can see it on a calendar, it's really helpful. And then I don't know if this is actually the point I was supposed to talk about this, but then I also just got like a moon printout off the computer, and I'll talk about this more in a second. But once I've kind of got these beside each other now in my office, and I just make some notes every day. So this is the first time for me that I've ever tracked anything in accordance with the moon. I've learned lots about it in the past, but I've never actually tracked it. And my period started on the new moon, which is yeah, that's the way it goes. But I never noticed that before. So I'm just like, ooh, this is cool. I'm like uncovering things. It's kind of fun, even though I've been pretty emotional. So, you know, when you have it on paper like that, you know, then you can think about how you can schedule things a little bit better to work with how you're feeling. So we're not constantly butting up against the, oh, I'm so sad. Oh, I'm emotional. Oh, I have cramp. Oh, I don't want to do it. My energy is low. It starts to make sense, right? And then we can really step back and have a different perspective. Yeah, so that was a cool little tool. So the lunar stuff, like I said, I had never noticed this for myself. So I'm loving this experience of diving into this a little bit. But when women, especially in like tribal communities or groups of women that live really close to nature, almost 100%, their ovulations, they would reach peak ovulation with the full moon. So if you think about, that's a period of summer, right? We're in full bloom. It's the brightest time during the moon cycle, right? Lots of light, lots of bright creative energy, and that lines up so nicely with this part of our monthly experience, right? Menses then, on the other hand, our period, kind of that shedding, the cleansing, a little bit darker time, that happens on the dark side of the moon or with the new moon. And that's what I was saying was exactly for me this month. And things may shift a little bit, right? Everything is always changing. So like if you start doing this and you're not, like, don't put yourself in the bubble of, oh, it should look like this and it doesn't look like this and oh, what's wrong with me? But just noticing, right, what your experience is. I think there's a lot of value. The moon and the tides interact with the electromagnetic fields of our bodies. So this does affect our physiological and our internal processes. 100% it does. Okay, the moon has this phase of darkness. It slowly comes into brighten, and we go through this phase with our cycles too. So even that understanding, it just takes a little bit of the kind of the societal pressure or hiding of it. It's just part of life. Like it's a cycle that we all go through, and we see it in so many different parts of our life on the earth and the planets and in the tides, in the seasons, right? And we're connected with all of that. So when we're talking about working with some of these energies that we have that are different, right? So in our full moon through to ovulation, this is really the culmination of our outward expression. We have more energy, we're more creative. It's a great time to pursue, like, go on a date, right? Plan something romantic with your partner. Start a new project. You're, again, that receptivity with others. So it's a good time to connect with people and be open to conversations, gatherings, when we're allowed gatherings again. Even like if you're getting into exercise, this is the time that you want to dive into a new exercise routine. You don't want to try and do that in the middle of your luteal phase. You're going to be like, no way, right? It doesn't feel right. This is also when our cravings are less. So, you know, it's a time to have maybe more of the like more healthy type foods around that you'll go to. You won't necessarily have the same cravings for the things that are higher fat and higher calorie. It's also a really good time to be assertive, which was something I read that was interesting to me. Because you're at your peak confidence and your peak creative ability, and you're able to really just step into who you are and be in that place of full bloom. It's a good time to say the things that you need to say and be assertive and speak your truth. And then, you know, also a time to just let go of the things that don't serve you. And a lot of times we hold on to those when we're in that second half of our cycle. We dig into them. We might notice them. We're thinking about them, journaling about them, but this is the time that we have the energy to step into something new. Okay. From the new moon and through into our menses, this is really when the veil, I love this, I stole this quote, the veil between the seen and the unseen worlds is much thinner. I just love that. So we have this experience where the left and the right sides of our brain, our hemispheres, are the most balanced. So we have a really kind of equal distribution about our sort of more logical brain and more intuitive brain. You might experience some really vivid dreams, like I mentioned, and this has definitely been something for me. So I would say try to journal those things out, like recreate the dream on paper. And then if you have any kind of like a meditative practice or a reflective process, maybe you have time to sit and dig into that a little bit. Meditating, journaling, contemplating, reflecting. This is such a magical time to get into these things. Like, we're ready for it. We're so in tune with our internal self. And then listening to that intuition, which isn't always easy. We get pretty good at pushing that little voice away, but notice it, right? And you might not be in this place ready to dive into that stuff. That comes with the full moon, but get it set out, right? Notice what's there, put it on paper, set some intentions, and then move into that stuff as the new moon comes forward. Think about, because our energy is often lower this time of the month, just one little step every day towards that intention or that thing that you've been thinking about, that voice has been speaking to you about. And that will prepare you for when your energy is at its highest to dive into it a little bit more fully. Again, having food that is nourishing, that will satisfy the craving. So maybe not the bag of chips, but maybe you, I don't know, maybe you're into dehydrating food or like making your own vegetable chips and you have those stored up so that when you come into the stage, you can get those cravings satisfied, you can feel good, you're nourished, but you're not proliferating bad habits or unhealthy habits by having that sort of more like I always think of like the ice cream and the chocolate and that kind of thing, right? Although have some dark chocolate on hand, so that's a good one. It's got lots of magnesium in it. We need that at this time of the month. So what I've really loved about this experience is this idea of working with our cycle. So we talked about kind of the different energies in both aspects, kind of those 2 14-day groupings of our cycle. Tracking that to see some patterns and cross-checking it with the moon so that you can work with that energy as well, because that it is powerful energy in the moon, and we can harness that to do the things that we need to do. So again, during the full moon, you're thinking about being more active, starting new projects, new routines, trying new things, presenting, getting in front of people, being social, taking that romantic trip with your partner, right? These are the things that you can actually look at the calendar and schedule for yourself. Maybe going on a romantic getaway is not a great idea when your sex drive is in the tank, right? Or, starting at the new, everything's going to open up here soon, and hopefully in a couple of weeks, maybe we can go back into our fitness centers or our gyms or our dance classes or whatever it is. But maybe we take a step back and just look at where we are in our cycle and think about when's a really good time to actually step into that. Maybe I don't just jump on first week. If it's not a good time for me, I can go a week later, right? And then during the new moon, I think this for me has lots of digging and writing and reflecting on the ideas of self-care and self-worth. Planning time where you can give yourself the rest that you deserve, right? That you need to step into your fullest person during this time of the month. So maybe there's a day in there, if you have kids at home and this is your time, and I'm going to get somebody, your mom, parent, caregiver, somebody going to come watch the kid for half of a day so that I can have some time. I'm going to ask if my spouse can make a couple of meals that week. I'm going to, you can set yourself up into things that just give you a little bit of breathing room. I think too, talking to your partner, your spouse, whoever is around you, that these are things that you need, and you're going to be a lot happier. And if they can help you with that, right? So that, spouse doesn't all of a sudden get into that, oh, she's just moody and emotional, she's in her period. Like, that's bullshit, sorry to say. That's just a societal thing that's been created from the male doctors that wrote the books in, as far back as we can imagine. But we need to just be in a place where we can say, this is what I need. This is how I'm feeling. I don't need to diminish that. It's a real thing. And I want to share that with you so that we can work through this together. Like, I think that's just such a beautiful way to look at this, right? You don't have to do this all by yourself, even though it's your body. If you're in a relationship with someone, that's big stuff to chat about. The intentions, small steps, writing down ideas. Like, we have lots of, my brain has been on fire this week. A mentor that I work with, she actually said to me, Diane, just get out of your head. Just do some things today to get out of your head. Go for the walk, have a nap. She said, you could watch Netflix, but it probably won't actually turn off your brain. So do something else, right? And it was actually really helpful. Do the things that make you feel really happy. I call it my list of 10s. So I have a list of things that when I do them, I feel the best. Like when I light a fire in our wood burning fireplace, or I go for a walk, or I dance to music in my kitchen. Like, those things light me up and I feel awesome. So I'm going to do more of those things during this time and give myself time and space to do that. As long as the cleaning and the organizing doesn't take too much of your energy, it's a good time to get into that stuff instead. But remember, you don't need to go through the whole house all at once. Like, give yourself the time to rest. So this next little bit, when I first put this together the other day, that's kind of where I stopped. And then this morning when I did my little meditation, I was like, feel like there's just some other stuff I need to say. So I've added these few in here, and I hope you find some value. From my holistic training in nutrition, we always looked at the menstrual cycle as a really important piece of body literacy and body awareness. And we kind of, we talked about it as an actual indicator of health. Okay. So when we looked at it that way, having a little bit of fatigue, a little bit of like low energy, maybe a little bit of cramping, that is all normal for us to go through, right? But you shouldn't be missing out on your life, canceling plans, like not going to work or to school or whatever it might be because of the symptoms that you're having. If that is your experience, I would suggest you most likely have some kind of a hormonal imbalance happening, and there are things that you can do about that, okay? So typically, a healthy cycle is between 21 to 35 days. And all of us, and it won't necessarily be the same every single month, even though that's what I was taught when I was younger. It will always be blah, blah, blah. No, it won't, okay? For any of you that have daughters or know of people that for adolescents, a normal cycle can be up to like 45 days long. So what do I know? I've been a volleyball coach for teenage girls for like the last 20 years. And how many of these young ladies that were like 12 years old just started their period and are on birth control, not because of any kind of preventative measure, but because their period was irregular, meaning really it probably wasn't. They were just still developing. They might have been in that really long window and somebody thinks that's wrong and they're on birth control as a hormone therapy. So, if you know young women like Megan, our girls around the same age, like this is something I have a daughter who's 8 and I'm all thinking about this, like, how am I going to approach all of that? Right. But I want to approach it from a place of empowerment and understanding and like, let's learn about and respect our body in a way that we can support it. Anyways, that's probably a different call. Experiencing around 2 to 7 days of bleeding. Again, everybody's a little different. And a healthy flow is about 80 milliliters, which is about 2.5 Diva cups. And that's it. Okay, so it's not actually a lot, right? And it can happen anywhere in those 2 to 7 days. Typically a healthy flow is also bright red, like a cranberry juice kind of red. So if you notice pinks or browns or different colors in there, then that can indicate that something might be just a little bit off. Also free of clots. So when we start our menstrual period, our body releases an anticoagulant because it would be absolutely traumatic if the whole uterine lining came away from the body at once. right? In one big clot. That would be awful. So our body's really smart. We have an anticoagulant that kicks in. Sometimes that's a little bit delayed on the first day of our cycle. And so, or period, I should say. So there may be some clotting on day one, and that's normal. But if you notice that clots are pretty consistent, and especially if they get to be about the size of a quarter or bigger, like the size of a toonie, then that can also indicate some hormone imbalance, and particularly an estrogen dominance. Okay, and so there are things that, again, we can do to help mitigate that. And then our really PMS, other than a little bit of that fatigue, a little bit of low energy, maybe a bit of cramping, that's normal. But anything that is really drastic and drastically impacts your day is not normal. Okay, it's not. And I'm also going to say that a lot of us are experiencing some of these things. So I'm not saying this to be like, there's something wrong with you, you need to fix it. I'm just saying that, you know, this is sort of a good place to be, to know what is normal, what's healthy. And if it's not, just start noticing, right? What maybe do I need to look at? Use your calendar, and then you can start. I'm going to give you some suggestions in a minute of some things that you can switch up, okay? Okay, so one of the big pieces that affects this hormonal imbalance and estrogen dominance is the health of our liver. So as you may probably know, the liver is our body's largest filtering organ. It does over 500 different jobs in the body, and I won't get into all of that, but essentially it filters our blood. It removes toxins, chemicals, hormones, byproducts. Like, it is a busy organ, and it is very effective at its job. But because of our crazy lifestyles, pretty processed most of the time, lots of chemicals and things in our world, it can get bogged down. And when the liver is bogged down, one of the things that it cannot do properly is filter excess estrogen from the blood. And when that happens, that estrogen stays in the blood, and then it settles in our fats and in our tissues, and we experience what's called estrogen dominance, meaning we just have too much estrogen in our body. Okay, so things that you can do, if you're noticing some of those things on that last page, these are things you can do that will support your liver and help it so that it can more effectively clean out that extra estrogen. Good quality whole foods, okay? Avoid the packages. Avoid anything in the package is processed. And I like to remind people too, because they're pretty commonplace in our world, and you can find the whole grain stuff. Breads and pastas are still processed foods, and we usually love them, especially in our luteal phase. But, you know, maybe it's something at just looking at switching that up for a little while to see if it makes a shift for you. Lots and lots of fiber, okay? Fiber basically binds the estrogen, the excess estrogen, and helps it to be pulled out of the body. So with fiber, healthy elimination should be on here, meaning you should be having a bowel movement every 1 to 3 times a day. Okay, at least. And then that will make sure that that elimination process is happening. Lots of pure water. I think we're a little bit more fortunate here in like Okotoks. I'm not sure what Okotoks water is like, but High River water is pretty good. There's not a ton of extra stuff added into it. But all the water that comes from the tap is going to have some chlorine in it. That is a toxin. So if you can even get like a Brita filter, put it in your fridge and have that as your drinking water. Because if you think about it, we shower in chlorinated water, we bathe in chlorinated water, we absorb all that through our skin. So as much as you can minimize the impacts of that stuff in the water, get your water as pure as you can, then it's actually going to help filter your body, right? It's going to help clean things out. Reducing the processed, the refined foods, and the trans fats. Those things really bog the liver down. And reducing alcohol, caffeine, and sugar. And these are probably the biggest ones. And I say biggest ones too, because they're the ones that we're most likely to have a bit of an addiction to, whether we realize it or not. And yes, sugar is addictive, and it's in everything. So even if you don't eat any like table sugar all the time, but if you have packaged foods in your cupboards, you're getting sugar in your diet. So as much as you can just make your food staples look like they came out of the ground, off the animal, from the chicken, you know, as clean and wholesome and as close to nature as you can will be your best bet. If you can just monitor too your use of any kind of extra drugs or medications, because those are all filtered through the liver as well. And then just going through your home, maybe taking a little inventory and noticing the products that you're using. So skincare, body care, shampoo, all that stuff that we rub onto our body, makeup every day. Women, I think it said the Environmental Working Group, I believe, said 163 different products that different chemicals that we're exposed to every single day in the products that we use. So that's big because, again, all of that is filtered through our liver. So looking for products that are natural and clean, making your own is probably the best thing you can do. Get some natural, like some shea butter, some coconut oil, beeswax, some pure essential oils, and you can make your own beautiful things, and they're amazing and they're safe and they're lovely. Cleaning products too is a big one that you can start to eliminate. Anything that has synthetic scents. So the air fresheners, the scented candles, like just get rid of them, because then we're breathing that stuff in, and that still all has to get processed too. Even if we very fortunate to have received a large bundle of clothing for my son from a friend who was done with her son's stuff. And we use pretty natural laundry detergent that doesn't have any fragrance in it. And when this stuff came to our house, I almost couldn't open the bag. It smelled so strongly of the detergent that she used. And it's just different, right? So I was just like, oh my goodness. And that was 2 weeks ago, I even yesterday put on a shirt that went through the wash with one of those pieces of clothing from my son, and I could smell it in my clothes. It's still there, right? That stuff sticks around. We put the clothes on our body, we wear the clothes, it seeps into our skin. So anything you can do to clear that stuff out. We don't need it. It's harmful, and it does impact our liver's ability to do its job. So we want to be helping, right? You want to think of, like, if you had a bucket and you're trying to fill up the bucket, right? I'm going to put all these good things in, but the bucket's full of holes. You just keep draining it out, right? So we got to plug those holes with all the good stuff. And then we start to fill that bucket up, right? And we can really benefit from all that is in there. Okay, so if the topic of, again, the screen that had some of those indicators, perhaps maybe something being a little bit out of whack, these are also some foods that you can focus on that have particular value for liver support and some gentle detoxification to help you work through that. Food is medicine, you guys. Our body operates off nutrients, and we've sort of lost that because food is just at our fingertips all the time now. We can just grab and eat. We don't really think about where it came from, how it got here, what it's doing inside, right? But in order for our liver to function, it has to have nutrients, and we get those nutrients from food or from supplements, and food first, always in my mind. Okay, so B vitamins are really important for the liver to function properly and to continue these detoxification pathways and make sure that they're working. So B6 is one that's really important, and you can find that in liver, tuna, bananas, summer squash, and blackstrap molasses. On the tuna note, moderate your tuna intake because it typically contains mercury, which is a toxin, so we don't want to go crazy with that. B12 will come from animal sources. So when you're looking at your animal sources, just try. I know it's hard because it can be quite expensive to eat all the free-range, antibiotic-free meat, but do what you can with that because there is value there, and animal sources of protein are a great source of B12, which is something that you also need for this healthy liver function. And then folate. So you're going to get that in all your green leafies. Okay, avocado is really good. Tropical fruit and oranges are also really high in folate. So thinking about, like, oh, this is something I'm working on. Okay, maybe I'm going to have a smoothie today. What can I put in my smoothie that helps this process? Well, I could put an orange in my smoothie, I could put maybe a bit of avocado and some kale or some chard. I'm going to blend that up, drink it back. Like that's a really nice little boost for healthy liver function, right? So just kind of working with things that way. One of the antioxidants that is basically like the super antioxidant, the antioxidant god for the liver is glutathione. And it has a very protective effect on the liver as well. So that's when we want to make sure we're getting a lot in, and you can get that in avocado, walnuts, asparagus, lemon peel, and vitamin C helps our body to produce more of that. So you can think of like the berries, peppers are very high in vitamin C, lemons, oranges, the citrus fruits, those kinds of things. Interestingly, about the lemon peel, you'd have to eat a lot of lemon peel to get that benefit, and most of us don't want to eat lemon peel. So you can actually get that benefit through a lemon essential oil, a pure therapeutic grade lemon essential oil. Don't go to the dollar store and buy lemon oil and start drinking it, because that will just add to your toxic load. But a lemon essential oil comes from the rind, where we get a lot of that glutathione benefit. Sulfur is another really important one. So we get that from our eggs, particularly the yolks. Lots of garlic, lots of onions, Brussels sprouts. Those things will add that the sulfur into your diet that you need to help pull things through as the liver is working. And glycine is an amino acid that you would find in good quality meats, fish, eggs, dairy, legumes, those kinds of things. And that's another thing that helps the liver do its job. Fish oils are something that I recommend for everyone, regardless of if this is something you're working on or pretty much anything else. They're anti-inflammatory. They will help with like lubricating the intestinal tract. So if constipation or that elimination schedule isn't on track for you, fish oils will help. And turmeric, and you may have heard of turmeric before. Turmeric actually works. There are two phases of detoxification, and I won't get into that, but they both have to be working. And we don't want to get into one phase while the other phase is stuck. So turmeric works in both of those phases. It's an amazing food to add into anything. Put it in a smoothie, like whatever, the orange or the pineapple with your greens and your avocado, put some turmeric in. The dishes with the lentils and the turmeric spices and those kinds of things, they're wonderful. And they're nice and warming this time of year too, but turmeric is an amazing herb that you can add into things for lots of great benefit. Other things that I guess always add into these protocols, and I get into this more in some of the like the one-on-one and the group coaching programs that I do, but things like saunas, sweating is one of the best ways to remove toxins from our body, especially heavy metals. The picture in the bottom there is of dry skin brushing. If you've never tried that, it's wonderful. It just illuminates the skin, but it also stimulates the lymph fluid to get toxins moving in and out. Exercise, meditation, breathing exercises for detoxification. Like there's all kinds of stuff that I dive into when I work with people more closely. But also things like if you're taking notes, you could do a quick Google search and find some info on that kind of stuff as well, because it all adds benefit, right? This sort of holistic perspective on our cycle and our body and what we're eating, and everything is working together, okay? So this whole process for me over the last couple months has really just been about like coming home to myself and just coming from a place where I'm like less hard on myself. I feel so bloated. I'm just, like getting on myself about that, or I'm feeling really tired, and how annoying is that? And why am I so emotional right now? And as I'm like talking to Nick with a tear on my face, like I've really been able to come away from that space, and I've been talking to him a lot actually about like, so this is what's happening. Who knew, right? Like it clears the air, and it allows you to come just back to you and be like, this is what I need. And that is a whole other conversation about our worth, our belief about ourselves, what we deserve, the abundance that can come to us. Like we could just, dive into all the things, but it's coming back, yeah, it's coming back to you, knowing yourself and what your body's doing and understanding and accepting. And then if there are changes you need to make, you can move from that place with that real connection to you in your mind and in your heart about it, what is right for you. Because we know ourselves the best. We truly do. I'll just tell you a really quick story. So my some of you might have heard this before, but I started on this path of holistic nutrition and things because I was really, really challenged with ulcerative colitis. And the medications worked for me for a while, but the side effects were horrific. And as soon as I stopped taking the meds, I was sick again. So I kind of started exploring a more natural route, and my naturopath suggested several alterations to what I was eating, and it literally shifted in a period of weeks. I had always been overweight. As a child and a super active athletic child, I was never able to lose that weight. And then I got so sick. And as soon as I changed what I was eating, it literally fell away. And it was just this like, oh my gosh, like I could have done this so long ago for myself. Maybe I wouldn't even have got to this point of this disease if I just knew that those foods weren't right for me. Right. So that was my sort of starting point, this realization that there is so much more out there than what we get in the mainstream. And then from that point, I just dove in, and I've been learning since then about the body and the mind and the emotions and mindset and mindfulness. And like, I'm just on this path and I love it. But what I have learned along the way is that the wellness isn't just this like place that you're trying to get to in whatever aspect. It is the process that you're on. It is the journey. Because I've had times in my life where I'm like, who am I to sit here on this screen and talk to these people about this when I'm still learning this, when I'm still in it, right? It's because there is no end point to get to, right? You're never finished. Things change, things shift, we pivot, we move, we grow, we learn, and that is wellness. That's the process. So what I always speak about is, and you've heard me already today, is that little voice in your head. And maybe there is something going on in your life about this topic that brought you here today. That's your intuition telling you, that looks interesting, maybe I should listen to that. So dive into that and start asking yourself the question, why? And when you come up with an answer, then ask it again and again and start getting into like, why is that important for me right now? Like what's going, because there's all the stuff on the surface, but there's a whole lot more underneath that we don't get a clear picture of all the time, right? So the fact that you're here today means you're already on this journey. You're already experiencing wellness in different capacities because you're here, because you're learning, because you're taking steps to expand yourself in different ways. So what I would encourage you to do is just keep trusting that little voice inside of you because it knows what you need. We just have to sometimes give ourselves the space to be open to hearing that voice because it's not always what we want to hear, right? But it knows. And if you listen, and then you just got to jump. I remember watching this video from Will Smith one time, and it was like one of his Instagram feeds or something. He was in a plane ready to skydive and was standing with his toes like on the edge of the plane with the backpack, and the guy was jumping with him, and you could see he was just terrified, right? Like so many thoughts going through his mind. He probably felt physically sick. But as soon as he jumped, he just flew, right? And then the whole thing at the end was just like, that was the hardest part, was just jumping. And we hold ourselves back from that sometimes. So just keep listening to that little voice and trusting it, because it will take you where you need to go for sure. I basically like I said to you when you came on here today, I shared this day because this is part of my journey right now, and I'm in it. But I've been finding so much value in exploring this that I've actually added this in as a module in an 8-week program that I'm running that starts on January 25th. It's called the Complete Wellness Lifestyle Program, and really the whole thing is to tune you into the elements of wellness that you can journey on further, that you can explore further, to step into the person that you know deep down that you are supposed to be. We do address nutritional stuff. We do talk about the toxic load, but a lot of the other work we do is some of this mindset things, these things that hold us back and keep us from venturing on this path that we know is right, but there's maybe some blocks in there. And so we work through that stuff in the program. So my door is pretty open. Like I was chatting with a lady yesterday that we were talking about some stuff for her kid, and she was like, "Oh, I've taken enough of your time. I'm not paying you right now. So I said, don't even worry about that. Like I do free chats with people all the time. So if you want to talk a little more about this, if you have a question, there is a link on my website where we can book like a little free chat, or just shoot me a message, and I'm super happy to chat with you some more. But I just want to really thank you guys for coming on. It's Saturday. The sun is now out. It looks like a beautiful day. So I hope you get to enjoy that. And I hope that this just brought a little bit of value, and maybe, you heard what you needed to hear in some way, shape, or form. But if you want to stay connected, I'm on Facebook and Instagram. On Instagram, I'm at DJ Wellness. On Facebook, I'm Diane Johnson, or I have a little group that I call Nurturing Wellness, and I post random things in there as well. So if you're interested in any of that, you can follow along. And otherwise, thank you so much for coming and sharing your Saturday morning coffee with me. And I'll stay on for a minute if you have any questions or anything. But yeah, I hope you have an awesome day.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm gonna close my slides off here, if I can remember how.
Dee, that was amazing.
Oh, thanks, buddy. Why can I not?
I want in on that program.
Hold on. Stop sharing. I want to see your faces. There you are. Oh, Mel, I can't see your face.
Well, that's because I'm being lazy today. I don't want to show it to these.
And so you should. It's Saturday, right? Well, yeah, we can chat for sure. Hey, Megan.
Hi, sorry I was so late.
Oh, that's okay. I recorded it so I can send you the end if you like, or the beginning that you missed.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Hey, Serenity.
Let's go live. Okay, I'll chat with you guys in a bit. Bye.
Thanks for coming, Allison.
Thank you. That was awesome.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, that was.
Oh, Tina, you made it. She's muted right now. Hi. Oh, I can't hear you, Tina.
Sorry.
Oh, there you are.
I got it figured out. It's my first time, so I had a little bit of trouble logging in at the beginning and figuring out the whole thing. But,
oh, no worries.
But I made it.
What time did you get on at?
I think it probably took me about 20 minutes to kind of get in place and get everything going. But yeah. So well, maybe if you didn't have too many introductions, I might have not missed too much.
Well, if you, I'll have a recording in a little bit, so I can send you a copy if you want the beginning. I mean, I think you got most of it.
Sure. And I also would be interested, like you said, I've started a path. Like I've started the path kind of years ago, but I had a child recently, and I will say that pregnancy, I had some indulgences that I hadn't had for quite some time, and it has been really hard to kick the sugar bug again. Like it's been really hard.
Yeah.
And hard to do that. So I'm trying to like make my way back to that path of back to eating healthy and feeling better, and maybe just like my age, because I'm over 40, right? So having a baby in your 40s is it's hard. I'm not gonna say it's gonna be easy. It's challenging. It's very challenging because I have older children than I had in my 20s, right? So I was like, no, I got this, like I've been there, done that. But no, not the
You're in
same.
a different space now, right?
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
my hormones, like understanding that, and I did find your ad very interesting because I was like, Kate, I started to take notice of that myself. Like I was like, you know what, like when there's a full moon, like I don't know, like sometimes I can be like so full of energy, and then other times I'm just like so moody, and like you said, the cravings, and I'm like, I started noticing pattern, right? So when I saw your Zoom classroom there, I was like, oh wow, I'm like, hey, maybe this is a thing, maybe I'm not just being silly,
I'm not
like
alone.
maybe I'm
Yeah.
so
Well, for
yeah,
sure.
so I really found your information today so helpful. It's like, okay, yeah, all right, and kind of like a reassurance, like, okay, I'm on the right path, like these things that I'm feeling, these things that I'm noticing, and even just like you said, taking notice, right? Like, because yeah, it's and dealing with what we have to deal. Like I'm a very social person, and having to stay at home now and not be able to have gatherings, like that's really affected my energy. Like I don't know if I feed off other people's energy. I never noticed it before, but now that I don't have it, I'm like, oh, something's missing,
Yeah. And so how do we keep those energy levels high when that's been a source for us in the past, right? Yeah, for sure. It's a real thing right now. Like I know a lot of people talk about sort of the manifestation of like it arrives as anxiety, or it arrives as depression, but it's so much too about the energy that we have and what we pull from others and what we give away, and like there's
totally
this whole not being around people it's a real thing for us, for sure. So
it is. Well, thank you very much. And thank you for the reminder. I appreciate it so much, because I actually was looking forward to it so much. And then when I seen it, I was like, I knew I had something going on. And the funny thing is, I kept telling myself last night too, I was like, hey, don't forget. Because, Saturdays are usually just breakfast days, right?
Yeah, exactly. Keep it low key. Well, yeah, for sure. I'll send you the recording when it's done if you're interested. I don't know if you saw the part about when I was talking about the calendar. Did you see that part?
No.
Okay, so this is something you can just try in the meantime, and then if you want to chat more, we can. But like, this is an example of what I did, because I used to try to keep track in a journal, because I'm a journaler, but it was too much. And then I would do it a few days, and then my kid, something happened to, and I'm off.
Yeah.
So I just printed this out, and I keep it somewhere. Like I keep it at my desk because I'm there every day, but it could be in the bathroom, it could be in the kitchen, like wherever you are. And I just use, like, I don't know if you can see, like there's a little sad face there.
Okay.
Like I
kind of like tracking your emotions, your feelings.
Yeah, your energy, everything. So like there was one that I have on there that's the little face, and it was not necessarily like a sad face, but I have all these like lines coming out of my head because I was just so much in my head that day. Right?
Yeah.
The days that I'm like really energetic, like I'm like, oh, I feel like I could do anything. Like I have a little symbol, and I do make some notes in there for sure, but it's also easier to see when it's laid out. And then if you're just kind of noticing the moon stuff, you can find something like this too, where it's just a printout. I just pulled it up off Google.
Okay.
And so I've just started keeping the two kind of together. And so when I hit my period this month, I was like, because I knew it was coming because of how I was feeling and stuff. And I was like, okay, it should be here in a couple of days. And then boom, it happened on the new moon. And I was just like, oh, well, that all makes perfect sense. And now I can stop beating myself up and be like, okay, what do I need right now? Like, or what can I actually take advantage of in this time? Like, I'm way more intuitive. I'm really connected right now with myself. Like, let's build on that stuff, right? So, yeah. So you could start with those things. Yeah. And just play around with it. Cool.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I do look forward to doing more with everything. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And making time for myself. That one's so huge for me right now. Like I've got a toddler now. So
yeah, dig into the oh, hello. The couch cushions are the best. Oh yeah. For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, anyways,
Anyway.
thank you so much. I
Yeah,
really
you're
appreciate it.
welcome.
And yeah, I look forward to any more of these Zoom classes. I'd totally be into it. And I would actually be interested in a program too, actually. It's just to kind of maybe just accountability, really, because for me, with so many things going on, and just like even like this today, like having a reminder of somebody being like, okay, hey, wait a minute, you're supposed to be here. And I'm like, oh shoot, yeah, it's about me. It's about me. Oh yeah, I have
It's for
time.
you,
For me
it's for
too,
you.
you know. Yeah.
Well, when I send you the recording of the video, I'll put in there a little link. And if you want, we can just schedule another time to have a quick chat, and I can tell you more about what that program looks like if you're still interested.
Sure. That would be awesome.
Awesome.
Okay, thank you so much.
Have a great
good
day.
day.
Okay, bye.
Thanks. Bye.